For the last step of this zipper, once everything is joined and your shield is in place and your zipper is working, you're gonna do a top stitch right here. This top stitch for every company is different. It could be 1 3/4 from the edge, 1 5/8 from the edge. It's pretty standard depending on the company you're working for. Levi Strauss might be 1 5/8 and Lucky might be 1 3/4. It just depends. So you can use your ruler if you want to measure over from the fold, and you can mark it. I don't recommend marking it in ink because then you're ruining your work. Another thing you can do is use Scotch tape or masking tape that comes in different colors. The only time I suggest marking your work is if you're working with the pens or tailor's chalk or wax or something that is going to be removed when you add steam, or you can easily wipe it off. But I'm going to show you how to use tape. So this area right here where we're going to be top stitching is blind. Why do we say it's blind? Because when I get over here and I'm sewing, I'm covering up my guide, so I can't really see what's happening. Now, the shape underneath here is curved. I know that I'm going to want it curved, but if I want to, I can measure over 1.5 inches. Maybe if you don't have one of those fancy ways to mark your fabric, you can just put a pin. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use masking tape. I'm going to take a piece of masking tape, and basically I want to make sure that my stitch width all the way down is the same length. So if I wanted to, I can put my ruler here. You don't want your stitch to be wider than your facing either, because the whole idea is you're joining the facing to the actual garment. So if I want to be at about 1.5 inches, I can use the edge of my ruler and I can make a guide. Once the tape is there, I could just make a stitch next to the tape, and that will ensure that I'm the same width all the way down and that my line is actually straight. Now again, we're only sewing the facing to the garment. The shield has to be moved out of the way. So I'm going to move it out of the way. I'm going to line up my work to make sure that my stitches are covered up. So if you want, you could have left the pins in, because once this is stitched in place, that's pretty much it. You can't move it after that. So we're stitching it so that we can't see any of those, or we're pinning it so that we can't see any of those stitches underneath. And then we're adding the top stitch. Once you have the masking tape in place, you have two options. You can start sewing from the top and coming down and stopping, or you can sew this direction. Sometimes it's easier to start from the bottom so that you can get right inside of that area. So I'm going to place my work underneath the foot, and I want to come down so that I'm right inside that area. I have a pin here so that I'm above the zipper stop. If the needle were to come down on top of that stop, the needle would break. So I'm right inside of that area. I'm going to wheel it by hand a couple of times and back stitch and come forward. Now you have options here. This curve is a little bit tight. You can use your hand wheel to do it if that helps you, or you can use your foot, but we're wanting to avoid the tape. So you're just going to keep pivoting your work, and if it starts to bunch up like that, you can readjust it by lifting the foot. Now when we're going up in this area, we don't want to sew on top of the tape because the tape is going to be ripped out. So once I'm close to the tape and using the tape as my guide, I am going to continue straight up, and I'm going to back stitch at the top. Once my stitch is in place, I can remove the pin. My shield is going to be put into place, and we're going to tack it. So now the shield is going to be folded over, and we're just going to tack it here at the bottom. So basically I'm just taking the facing and the shield together, and I'm going to run a stitch right here in this corner. I'm going to place the work under the foot and drop it down, and I'm just going to tack it. I'm just going to go and do a little bit of reverse just to hold it in place. clipping my thread. So that's going to hold my shield in place. I can take my pins out. I can tape my masking tape off. And then that's your fly. So it looks like this. And that's a fly front.